We also want you to know that our broadcast today is partially sponsored by Zaxby's in West Point, where you'll always find fresh food and friendly service. Try their Chipotle and their avocado ranch tacos. Now I'm hungry. Just saying that, thinking about that. We welcome now Jennifer Lay, Director of Community Development, Mississippi Main Street Association. Hey, Jennifer, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
So the Main Street Association, it's been around a couple of decades or so, it seems like. I seem to remember in business maybe being associated with it somehow. I think they were perhaps raising money to...
We are celebrating our 40th anniversary this year.
So then
yes.
20 years or so when I guess
That's
was involved
right,
with
40
it.
years.
It's been a really neat thing, and West Point is a member of that, of course. And I was just bragging about what a great Main Street area West Point has, and so many towns and cities across the landscape of the state of Mississippi. You can say the same for them, and to a great extent, that's because of the great work of the Main Street Association.
That's right, but we would not be anything for our association without our local programs and our local directors. I often say that they are the ones that are kind of the hands and feet. They're doing the work, they're committed, and they're in the trenches, and we really are just catalyzing, their success, just going out there and providing them with the tools that they need. And, we've been very successful with that in the last few years, and we're just really excited about where the organization is now.
So give us kind of an assessment of the health of Main Streets across Mississippi's towns and cities. How are we doing?
We have 48 designated programs, and they are not only designated by the state, but they are nationally accredited programs, which means they are up there with the Chicagos and the Bostons of the world. And the directors are doing a lot with a little resources. We have really raised the profile of the association so that we can raise the profile of the organizations, because they're underfunded, but they're doing awesome work with little funding. The coolest thing about our directors and our associations is that they're so nimble and flexible that when COVID happened and all the negativity that came with it, they so easily shifted and really just supported and raised their communities to the level that they needed to make it through the pandemic. And we saw so much success even coming out of that time with small businesses opening and be able to keep the doors open.
Yeah. So is there sort of a blueprint that makes for a thriving Main Street environment? Like you need these kinds of businesses, these kinds of just entities located in the downtown Main Street sort of area for it to succeed? So
one of the best things about Main Street is I can't say there's a one-size-fits-all approach to revitalization, because the Main Street approach is built completely on the assets of the local community. And so while we do operate on principles that are around essentially 4 points, we look at the design of a community, how we engage the people in the community and serving the people of the community, we come in and we look at the assets that they have and we capitalize on those, because we don't want to take a blueprint and make it fit. West Point is not Starkville, Starkville is not Columbus, and Columbus is not Tupelo. So we really just want to maximize the assets that they already have going on and make their communities more successful and more economically stable through those assets.
So is the association set up such that the members of it interact and you guys kind of facilitate that so that they learn from each other?
They do, and we say that is the most important thing about the association is our network.
Sure.
Any of our local directors will tell you they probably learn as much from each other as they do from the education and the resources that we give to them. When we take on a new community, we do go in and give them a plan that we call a roadmap, or you may have heard it as a charrette. But what we do is we really train them and empower them to do the work, and they're all having the same successes and the same struggles. So being able to work together and learn from each other and not reinvent the wheel if they approach the same issue that maybe somebody else had is probably one of their biggest assets.
Sure. Now, is this association, Jennifer, is this something unique to Mississippi, or do these such organizations exist in other states?
So there's an organization called Main Street America. It was actually started in 1980 by the Trust. There was a movement where the federal government realized we were doing a great job of preserving our historic buildings like our courthouses and our federal buildings, but we weren't applying those same approaches to local communities. And so when the suburbs were built and the Highway Act moved people out, our downtowns were dilapidated.
Yeah.
And so they said, you know what, let's test this. Let's pilot putting funding into communities and taking the same approach and putting it into the power of place, where people interact, where they shop, they work, and they live all in the same place. And so Main Street America, I think, has about 1,200 local communities that are overseen through coordinating programs, which is what Mississippi Main Street is. So you've got a Georgia Main Street, a Missouri Main Street, an Arkansas Main Street. In fact, we host a tri-state conference with Louisiana and Arkansas.
Okay.
And so while they learn from each other, we also learn from the other states.
Sure. Well, that's what I was going to ask you, is if you collaborate with them and engage in any sort of idea sharing and then pass that on to members of your association.
We do. We go to coordinators meetings with all the other state levels, and so we're able to learn and pass things down to our leaders, but also we encourage our directors to go to some of those national conferences. A lot of our small towns would not realize how much they can even learn from the implementation in a larger community, things that can be replicated, and sometimes even easier in small towns than large towns.
Yeah, I can see that. And Mississippi is a state that is comprised mostly of small towns. We don't have a lot of giant urban areas where most of our population lives. We're pretty dispersed,
That's
honestly.
right.
So is that a positive, or is that a challenge for the small communities?
Obviously, with every opportunity comes a challenge.
Sure.
And so because we are so small and we're rural, a lot of times the tax base is lower than a lot of the big communities are.
Yeah.
However, Main Street is so grassroots effort that a lot of times those small towns are able to come together a lot easier and to implement and affect change in their communities. And so we really have seen that when a community is really invested in we talk a lot about placemaking, but place keeping, keeping their culture and keeping their assets and preserving it. That's what really raises the tide to support the economy, which is creating sustainable businesses. And that's what it's all about, is sustainability of not just a community, but also the business owners and the cultural assets that are in that community. And we do have some larger areas. We look at our communities like Gulfport, that's more like 75 to 80,000 people. And then obviously Jackson, downtown Jackson. And that's a little bit different. But what we're able to do then is go to places like Birmingham and ask them how they've tackled those more urban environments that are very different to a place like West Point.
Sure, makes sense. We're talking to Jennifer Lay, Director of Community Development, Mississippi Main Street Association. So, Jennifer, what about the association's work with the public sector, with government at both the municipal level and the state level? How do you engage, or do you?
So we do engage. We engage very heavily with the Municipal League, MML. We do a lot of speaking engagements and training for municipal leaders. We feel like it's very important for us to help make them aware of the importance of their main streets. You'd be surprised. Sometimes mayors and boards of aldermen don't even understand what Main Street does. They just know they're out there killing it, working every day.
Sure.
And that it's more than just putting on a festival, which a festival is very important. It's purposeful, but it's also economic development in the sense that we're recruiting workforce, we're recruiting small business, and we're creating an environment where people want to live, to work in a community, and where people have a good quality of life in that community. And so us being able to really advocate with not only local leaders but also our state leaders. We've really raised our advocacy push in the last 3 or 4 years, very close relationships with our legislators, and they support the work that their directors do. And we've been able to secure funding to send back to our local communities, which at the end of the day is our goal, because if we make them better and stronger, then we're doing our job.
How are we doing as far as recruiting our young folks that are looking to set up their households in the small, mid-sized businesses? Community, excuse me.
I mean, we're very cognizant that brain drain is a huge issue. We have so much talent coming out of Mississippi State and Ole Miss and Southern Miss and even our community colleges that a lot of times there's a perception that they need to go to Austin and Nashville, but we are equipping our communities to create those places here. We're very well aware that people kind of choose where they want to live now and then choose where they want to work, and we have to create the place where they can work from anywhere and where they enjoy it. And so that quality of life component is really raising the bar for us to retain that talent that we're not only losing, but that we also want to recruit.
And the cost.
And the cost, it's proven, that it's cheaper and sometimes easier to open a business in Mississippi, and we can offer the same things that they're seeking, that are the amenities that they want, but their families want too, that there is a healthy, vibrant place that they can be. And so, working with our communities to really catalyze investment for entrepreneurship, small business incubators, a lot like the Makerspace in Starkville, co-working spaces, things where we can just get them here and then they continue to grow here, and they just saturate themselves into the environment that they're in, and they stay. But also not just recruiting, but retaining, because we know it's much easier to retain than to recruit new, and so we try to spread our focus across both of those.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally makes sense. Jennifer, appreciate you coming on.
Thank you so much.
Yep. Jennifer Lay, Director of Community Development, Mississippi Main Street Association, has been our guest on Middays. We're in West Point, Mississippi, the West Point Growth Alliance. We're stepping aside for a break. Coming right back with more. Stay with us.